What you are about to hear happened so fast that no one even had time to scream, and by the time anyone realized what was happening, a tiny 2-year-old girl was already sinking beneath the water of her family's backyard swimming pool with her eyes wide open and her little hands reaching up toward a sky she could no longer see, and the only living creature on that property who understood what was happening was a dog that everyone had always ignored, a dog that no one ever expected to do anything heroic, and what that dog did in the next 90 seconds would leave an entire family shattered with guilt, overwhelmed with gratitude, and asking themselves how they could have missed the signs that were right in front of them the whole time. So if you have ever doubted whether animals truly understand danger, whether they can sense things we cannot, whether they love us more deeply than we give them credit for, then I need you to hear this story all the way to the end, because what happened in this backyard that summer afternoon will stay with you for the rest of your life. This family lived in a quiet neighborhood in Florida, the kind of place where the sun is always shining, where kids are always running around barefoot, and where having a backyard pool is just part of everyday life. And for this family it had always felt completely normal to have a beautiful in-ground pool just a few steps from their back door. They had safety covers they used at night, they had a small fence around part of the yard, and they had always been careful. But here is the thing about careful. Careful only works when nothing unexpected happens, and on this particular Saturday afternoon, something unexpected was about to happen that would change everything they thought they knew about safety and about the quiet golden retriever mix they had rescued from a shelter 3 years earlier. Her name was Rosie, and Rosie was the kind of dog that most people forgot was even in the room. She was gentle, calm, never barked much, never jumped on guests, never caused any trouble. And honestly, the parents sometimes joked that Rosie was more like a piece of furniture than a pet because she just laid around, followed the kids from room to room, and never really demanded attention. But what they did not realize was that Rosie was always watching, always listening, always quietly aware of every single thing happening in that house, especially when it came to the youngest member of the family, a tiny blonde-haired 2-year-old named Lily who had just learned to walk about 8 months earlier and who had become absolutely obsessed with water ever since the family went to the beach the month before. Lily loved water, she loved splashing in the bathtub, she loved playing with the hose in the front yard, and every time she saw that pool through the sliding glass door she would press her little hands against the glass and babble excitedly. And her parents always smiled at how cute it was, never once thinking about how that innocent curiosity could become something dangerous. On this Saturday, Lily's mom was inside finishing up some laundry, Lily's dad was on a work call in the home office with the door closed, and Lily's older brother who was 9 had been asked to keep an eye on his little sister while she played in the living room, and he was doing that, sort of, but he was also playing a video game and had gotten distracted. And for a few minutes he did not notice that Lily had wandered away from her toys and toward the back door. Now here is where everything begins to fall apart, and I need you to picture this clearly because the next 2 minutes would determine whether this story ends in tragedy or in a miracle. Someone had left the sliding glass door cracked open just a few inches, probably Lily's brother earlier that morning when he let Rosie outside, and Lily, with her tiny curious fingers, managed to push that door open just wide enough to squeeze her little body through. And suddenly she was outside, alone, toddling toward the shimmering blue water that had been calling to her for weeks. Rosie was lying on the patio in the shade, doing what she always did, just quietly existing, but the moment Lily stepped outside Rosie's head lifted, her ears perked, and she watched the little girl with an intensity that no one in that family had ever noticed before, and as Lily waddled closer and closer to the edge of the pool Rosie stood up, her body tensing, her eyes locked on the child. And something deep inside that dog's instincts told her that something was very wrong. Lily reached the edge of the pool and crouched down, reaching her tiny hand toward the water, trying to touch it, trying to splash it the way she did in the bathtub, but she leaned too far forward, her balance shifted, and in one horrible silent second she tumbled headfirst into the deep end of the pool, and there was no splash loud enough for anyone inside to hear, there was no scream because Lily did not even have time to take a breath before she went under. And just like that, a 2-year-old child was drowning in her own backyard while her family carried on with their Saturday completely unaware. The first few seconds were the worst because Lily did not know how to react. She had never been in water like this without someone holding her, and her little arms flailed and her legs kicked, but she could not figure out which way was up, and she sank down, her eyes open, her mouth closed tight, her tiny body suspended in the blue water like something out of a nightmare, and no one saw it, no one heard it, no one knew, except Rosie. Rosie did not hesitate. She did not wait to see if someone else would come. She bolted toward the pool and launched herself into the water without a single second of hesitation. And I need you to understand that Rosie was not a young dog. She was almost 10 years old. She had arthritis in her hips, and she had never been trained as a rescued dog or a service animal. She was just a shelter mutt who had spent her whole life being overlooked and underestimated, but in that moment none of that mattered because the only thing Rosie knew was that her baby was in the water and she had to get to her. Inside the house, Lily's brother finally looked up from his game and realized his sister was gone, and he felt that cold jolt of panic that every older sibling knows, and he called out her name, and when she did not answer he got up and started looking around, and that is when he heard it, the sound of frantic splashing coming from the backyard, and he ran to the sliding door and looked outside, and what he saw made his whole body freeze. He saw the pool churning with movement. He saw Rosie in the water thrashing and paddling, and his first thought, his very first instinct, was that Rosie had gone crazy, that Rosie was freaking out in the pool for no reason, and he screamed for his mom. His mom came running and she saw the chaos in the pool and she also did not understand. She saw Rosie struggling, she saw water splashing everywhere, and for a few horrible seconds she thought Rosie had just fallen in and was panicking, and she was actually annoyed. She was actually frustrated because she thought the dog was just being a problem, and she yelled at Rosie to calm down, not realizing that her daughter was beneath the surface. But then Rosie did something that changed everything. Rosie twisted her body and dove her head under the water, and when she came back up she had the back of Lily's shirt clamped in her jaws, and she was pulling with every ounce of strength her old tired body had left, trying to drag that baby toward the shallow end, and Lily's mom saw it. She saw her daughter's limp little body being pulled through the water by the dog she had always ignored, and the scream that came out of that mother's mouth was something no one in that family will ever forget. She jumped into the pool fully clothed, her phone still in her pocket, and she grabbed Lily from Rose's mouth and lifted her out of the water, and Lily was not moving, her lips were blue, her eyes were closed, and in that moment everything stopped, everything went silent, and all that mother could think was that she had failed, that she had looked away for 5 minutes and now her baby was gone. She pulled Lily onto the pool deck and started screaming for her husband, and he came running, and when he saw his wife on her knees over their lifeless daughter he nearly collapsed, but somehow he kept it together. He tilted Lily's head back, he started doing the infant CPR they had learned years ago and hoped they would never need, and Rosie, exhausted, barely able to keep her own head above water, dragged herself to the steps of the pool and collapsed on the concrete, her sides heaving, her body shaking, and she never took her eyes off that little girl. The seconds felt like hours, the chest compressions felt useless, and just when both parents were starting to lose hope, Lily coughed, water came spilling out of her tiny mouth, and she started crying, and I cannot even describe to you what that sound meant to that family. The sound of their baby crying was the most beautiful thing they had ever heard, and they held her and sobbed and thanked God and did not even fully understand yet what had just happened. The ambulance came. The paramedics checked Lily over, and they said she was incredibly lucky. A few more seconds underwater and this would have been a completely different story, and as the reality began to set in, as the shock started to fade and the parents started piecing together what had actually happened, they looked over at Rosie, still lying on the concrete, still panting, still watching Lily with those tired golden eyes, and they realized that their dog, the dog they had dismissed as boring, the dog they sometimes forgot to pet for days at a time, had just saved their daughter's life. The guilt hit them like a wave, not just the guilt of not watching Lily closely enough, but the guilt of never really seeing Rosie for who she truly was. They had adopted her because she was calm and easy, they had kept her because she did not cause problems, but they had never once considered that her quietness was not emptiness, that her stillness was not indifference, that the whole time she had been watching, protecting, loving in a way they never recognized. Lily's brother sat on the patio steps and cried, not just because he had been scared, but because he blamed himself. He knew he should have been watching, and his parents had to hold him and tell him it was not his fault, but they also had to face the truth that they had all gotten comfortable, they had all assumed that nothing bad could happen in their own backyard, and they had all underestimated the quiet dog who had been guarding their family all along. That night, after Lily was home safe and tucked into bed, after the doctors confirmed she would be completely fine, the whole family sat in the living room and Rosie laid in the middle of the floor, and for the first time ever, every single person in that family got down on the ground and wrapped their arms around her and told her she was a good girl, and Rosie's tail wagged slowly, tiredly, and she let out a deep sigh like she had been waiting her whole life for them to finally see her. The family installed new locks on the sliding door the very next day, they signed up for infant swim survival lessons, and they put up extra barriers around the pool. But more than any of those changes, the biggest shift was in how they looked at Rosie. They stopped seeing her as background noise and started seeing her as a hero. They started giving her treats and belly rubs and long walks. They started talking to her like she understood every word. Because honestly, after what happened, they believed she did. What this story teaches us is something we already know deep down but forget all the time, that the ones who love us most are often the ones who love us most quietly, that loyalty does not always bark or demand attention, sometimes it just watches and waits and springs into action when no one else will, and that the heroes in our lives are not always the ones we expect. Sometimes they are the ones we forget to thank until they do something that forces us to see them clearly. I think about this story a lot, especially when I see people dismiss their pets as just animals, or when I hear someone say that dogs do not really understand what is happening around them, because Rosie understood. Rosie saw danger before any human in that house did, and Rosie did not wait for permission or praise, she just acted, and that little girl is alive today because of it. So here is what I want to ask you, and I really want you to think about this. Have you ever had a moment where an animal in your life did something that made you realize they were paying more attention than you thought? Have you ever looked back at a situation and realized that your pet was trying to tell you something you did not understand at the time? I want you to tell me about it in the comments, because I truly believe that the more we share these stories, the more we remind each other how connected we really are to the animals we love. And if this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the quiet, loyal companions in your life, I want you to share it. Send it to every parent you know. Send it to every dog lover you know. Send it to anyone who has ever underestimated the silent heroes in their home. Because this story is not just about a dog saving a child. It is about all the love we take for granted until it becomes the only thing standing between us and tragedy. And I hope we all remember that the next time we walk past our pets without stopping to really see them, because they are always watching over us.